Jays fans are fired up about one specific player heading into next season, and he's finally getting the recognition that he deserves for some major media outlets. So it's nice to see him finally getting that respect, but at the same time, he's getting disrespected because he's a lot better than what people are making him out to be. So we'll break that down and much more in this episode of Jays Digest. Welcome in, everybody, to Jays Digest. I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse. Nick, we're switching it up a little bit here. We're not going to be focusing on the players that are going to be here, that are not going to be here, that are going to come in, that are going to get traded. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what the offseason plan is for the Toronto Blue Jays. We're just basically reporting on what we are hearing. So that is why we've been keeping you up to date on that front. But we want to focus on one specific individual who was one of the lone bright spots on the Toronto Blue Jays last year, and that is Spencer Horwitz, who had himself a really nice official rookie season, even though he had a cup of coffee the year before that with the Jays. Nick, we saw some great things out of Horwitz. We saw him flash some power potential as well, which we didn't really know was there once he first came up to the big league. So he took some strides as a player. Saw him play a lot of second base, saw him play some first base. So he's versatile. He was making a lot of winning plays in his time with the Blue Jays this season. And had he been up from the start of the year instead of, let's say, Daniel Vogelbach or maybe some other guys that were occupying that DH position or second base position like Kevin Biggio, maybe the Jays would have been in a different spot at the end of the year. But I digress. Here they are heading into the offseason now, and he's one of their more promising pieces that they have to build around going forward.
Yeah, and he got some recognition, but he also got, among that recognition, some disrespect. But as you can see here, Spencer Horwitz has been named the MLB Pipeline's AL, or not AL, All Rookie second team. And again, you mentioned it. Spencer Horwitz has had a very interesting career up to this point. He's not a prospect anymore. He's a rookie, I guess. Last year was his rookie year. He briefly played the year before. But what he has done, especially last season over 97 games, you mentioned it. We spoke about it during the season last year. If he would have been up, whether it's replacing Daniel Vogelbach, even just replacing some of the other players' playing time, he would have helped the Jays probably not make the playoffs, but it would have looked a little bit better. He finished with a 790 OPS. He cooled off a bit towards the end of the year. But this is a guy that at 26 years old, a bit of a late bloomer. He hasn't really gotten a chance at the MLB level until this year. Been in the Jays system for a while. And when you compare him to some players who are considered AL Rookie of the Year favorites, in this case, Austin Wells, it's a little bit interesting. Now, again, there's some interesting things regarding this. Of course, I'm not going to get into the debate about Austin Wells versus Spencer Horwitz, but it was very interesting for me that he only got named to the All Rookie second team. I think he could have gotten a little bit higher there on this team, and a lot of Jays fans agree.
Yeah, I guess the thing with Wells is that he
Yes,
plays
sir.
a more premium position, so it's harder. And whereas Horwitz, is he a first baseman? Is he a second baseman in these rankings? We don't really know. It's not for terms of comparison. But what I do love about Horwitz is that he has a lot of skills that are translatable to the big leagues. So we saw his elite plate discipline in AAA ball. We were wondering, okay, is that going to carry itself over? And it has. For the most part, it has. You see his stats from this season, a 357 on base percentage. That is legit, man. That plays. And the batting average, too, it's pretty solid. So if you can have an OPS close to 800 and elite plate discipline like Spencer Horwitz does in two-thirds of a season,
Mhm.
I'm not even two-thirds of a season. So it just shows you that he was really solid this year, and he's a professional hitter. He's not a prospect anymore. He was never the flashiest, sexiest prospect either, but at the same time, he's got a very high floor, and not a necessarily high ceiling. But you need guys like that. He's a guy who can play multiple positions. He can get on base for you. He can hit for contact. He can run into one every now and then. That is a very valuable guy to have in your organization, and who hits left-handed as well. So you can talk about his deficiencies all you want and say that, oh, maybe we'd like to see some more power out of the first base position or the second base position, whatever. I'm good with this. I'm good with a guy who's going to have a near 800 OPS as a floor of a season and just be able to contribute in many different ways, and that's what Horwitz did. So he's definitely someone to keep an eye on going into next season, and he's going to be very important for the Blue Jays and what they're trying to accomplish. If they're going to be competitive in 2025, I guarantee you that Spencer Horwitz is going to have a lot to do with that.
Yeah, he's going to be, like we said, I mean, he was one of the best contributors this year. He played only 97 games, and it's going to be interesting to see what he does next year, especially if Vladdy starts to play a little bit more at third, which obviously we're not entirely sure if that's the case yet, but it's something that's been floated out there. And either way, obviously he didn't get the AL Rookie First Team, but the fact that he got a second team, at least he's getting some recognition. Again, some of it's probably due to defensive positioning, with him only playing DH and first base, as well as the limited games. But I think next year it's going to be his big breakout year. He's 27 years old. He really needs to put together a really strong season here if he wants to continue to compete. But Peter, something else to discuss today is that the scouting director Shane Farrell has left the Jays to join the Tigers, and we're talking about prospects to a degree anyway. I'm curious to see what your opinion is on this, as a lot of Jays fans' opinion is kind of swayed, and he's reunited with GM Scott Harris, who he worked with before in the Cubs organization. And again, he joined the Jays 5 years ago in 2020. Are you worried about this at all? I don't think that, nothing against Shane Farrell. They haven't really had a great run at the draft recently, aside from maybe Austin Martin and a couple other guys. But I don't think there's too much loss here. I'm happy for him. He gets to move on to where he wants to go. But I saw some Jays fans out there a little worried. I'm not too worried. I pumped the brakes on that. And quite frankly, the Jays farm system and the picks they've made, obviously not solely on Shane Farrell or anything like that, but there's definitely some room for improvement there.
Yeah, there is, and a lot of voices are heard when making these picks. A lot of input goes into the conversation as well. So it's not just him making these selections. He's a scout, and he's the one that is providing this information to the general manager and the president of baseball operations to make these choices. So yeah, not all on him, but maybe it's a little worrisome that he wanted to leave the situation. Maybe he just thought that he wasn't allowed to do what he wanted to do and maybe couldn't give his entire input. I'm not going to speculate here, but maybe there was some things going on behind the scenes that made him want to chase a different position or some greener pastures, you could say, because the Tigers are headed in the right direction. They have a pretty good foundation right now with a lot of young players, and I'm sure he's going to be excited to add to that. So yeah, the Jays have some work to do. And prospects are never a given. Like Mike Trout was not the first overall pick, but you could argue that he's the greatest player of this generation. There are some guys that are touted as generational, and then they end up not even making it to the big leagues. So you truly don't know. It's not an exact science. So I'm not going to be pinning this misfortune and bad drafting on any particular individual. But yes, the Blue Jays maybe needed a change in that regard, and good for Farrell moving on. And hopefully the next guy that comes in can hit on a few more draft picks, because I'm not going to say that the Jays haven't hit on any draft picks. I would say that Alek Manoah has been a success for them, finishing third in Cy Young voting. That's no joke, even though he had a terrible season the year before that. I do still believe that he can get back to that. So they've had some success. And like you mentioned, Austin Martin being able to acquire José Berríos for him. So there have been some good notable draft picks here, but maybe nothing that is turned into a superstar. So hopefully that changes.
Yeah, and now, like Ben Nicholson says here, the Jays' long offseason to-do list includes finding a new scouting director. So there's going to be a lot that's dropping. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news like we do. So make sure to hit the subscribe button, and we will see you guys tomorrow.